Okay, so this is a video to help you finish your separations lab write-up. I'm going to go over how to do the analysis and the conclusion part. Okay, so your journals should look something like this. On page 15 on the right side, you should have the pre-lab questions, purpose copied, and the hypothesis written. I checked this off on the very first day. On the left side, on page 14, you should have a section labeled data with a complete data table. Then you should have the next section, analysis, underneath it. This is where you're going to write your percent error work and answers, and then the conclusion should be at the bottom. Okay, so the analysis part, you only have to do two things. You have to find the percent error for sand and salt. Percent error is a very simple formula. You just need two things. You need the initial mass and the final mass. Initial minus final divided by the initial, and then make sure you multiply by 100 to change it to a percentage. Your initial mass you should already have, so let me go over how to find the final mass of both salt and sand. Okay, so to find the final mass, recall you already have the initial mass of both salt and sand recorded in your data table. They're both probably or around 2 grams. Okay, so let's do find the final mass of the sand. You need two numbers from your data table. You need to get the mass of the filter paper and sand and subtract the mass of the filter paper. So for example, and again, use your own numbers, but I'm just going to give you an example. My mass of filter paper and sand is probably around 2.8. Mass of the filter paper is around 0.8. So that means the mass of my sand final would be 2 grams. So finding the final mass of salt, again, you're going to need two numbers for the final salt mass. You need the mass of the dish, watch glass, and salt. Subtract mass of dish and watch glass. So for example, the mass of my dish, glass, and salt, which for most of us we also had water in there. So this is going to be a pretty big number. I'm just going to make up probably around 120 grams. The mass of my dish and watch glass were 95. So if you were going to subtract those two, I'd have 25 grams as the final mass of my salt. Very large number compared to what you really started out with, but why? Because this has water in it, and that's okay. Okay, so once you found the final mass of both salt and sand, you need to find the percent error. So I'm going to do an example of finding the percent error of sand. So my initial amount of sand was 2 grams. On a couple of slides before this, I found out that my final mass of sand was also 2 grams. Some of you may have a number that's a little bit smaller than this, and that's okay. Divide that by the initial, which again was 2.0. So whatever this number is, I'm going to multiply that by 100. So if you do 2 minus 2, that's going to get you 0. 0 divided by 2 is just going to give me another 0. Multiply that by 100. So I'm very lucky. My percent error is very, very small. Some of you may have a larger percent error, and that is okay. Okay, so once you found the percent error of both sand and salt, you need to write out your conclusion, which should be 4 to 5 sentences in a paragraph format. You need to make sure that you restate your hypothesis. We said that if sand, salt, water were a mixture, then it can be physically separated. Say whether you accept or reject your hypothesis. All of us should be accepting this hypothesis because it was definitely a mixture and we were definitely able to separate it. Again, be a little redundant. Restate what your percent errors were for both the salt and sand. And the reason you're going to do that is because you are going to then discuss why you had percent errors. Discuss possible sources of error. So we know that we had water in our evaporating dish, and that could definitely give us a much larger percent error than we needed to have. You could have lost some of the sand or some of the salt. So make sure you include all of those things in your conclusion.